Okay, ladies and gentlemen, grab the kids, grab the family, get fireside, get under a blanket, get in a tent, get in an RV, get on the road, go to work, stay home, watch a movie, do what you gotta do. But this is the Lone Star Cajun podcast, and you're back. You're back for episode. Gosh, this has got to be 13. This has got to be episode 13, guys. We're back for a 13th episode. We're well into double digits now, and you guys have come back yet again to watch the Lone Star Cajun podcast, and I'm very, very excited to be your host. I'm very excited that you guys came back, that you're here to listen to what I have to say to this crazy old guy. So let's just get right into it. I'll start with our sponsors. I like to thank our sponsor, Anchor. Anchor is a podcast hosting platform. They will host your podcast, help you kind of get up and running. They help you get some sponsorship opportunities. They'll also put your podcast on a number of mainstream other podcasting platforms to kind of get you branched out a little bit. So Anchor is a very good partner to start with. I would recommend Anchor if you plan to start out a new, fresh podcast of your own. So that's Anchor. Thank you, Anchor. We have our website, the LoneStarCajunPodcast.com. From our website, you can access our Anchor page, listen to the audio files if you prefer to listen to the podcast in an audio format. What else? Let's see, our website. We also have a short introduction about the podcast. And most importantly, you can access our Teespring store from the website. There's a link on one of the pages that you can access our Teespring store. And that's actually our merchandise page. So you can go to our Teespring store and get a nice selection of premium merchandise from the podcast. So if you want to feel like you're a little bit more involved in a part of the podcast, you can go and get you a nice set of merch. Greatly appreciated. So thank you, Teespring. Thank you, Anchor. And check out our website, LoneStarCajunPodcast.com. And as always, if you prefer the audio format, you can head to Anchor. And from there, you can access Spotify, Apple Music, and lots of other podcasting platforms if you so choose to listen to the audio version instead. Well, all right, guys. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. I had a great week. I hope you guys have too. I hope everyone is staying safe in this crazy, crazy year. It's got to be the worst start to a year, definitely, that I can remember in my lifetime. I'm not going to say it's the worst all time for sure, but certainly for me, in my recent memory and in the lifetime that I can remember, I would say this has got to be one of the absolute worst starts to a year ever. Let's just go right through it. We have COVID-19, which took up a large part of the beginning of the year. Then I have to think of all these things. Well, I believe right at the start of the year, it was debatable whether we were going to go to war in the Middle East again. Then it came to COVID, which was just a disaster. Then what was between COVID and, I'm trying to think. So we had COVID. Then we had the George Floyd killings, and we all know that's gone. So all of sports have been suspended because of the COVID. Then we have this. Then we have that. And then in my town where I live, one of the most historic and famous restaurants in the town, if you've ever been to Texas A&M, then you've probably been to the Dixie Chicken. Its roof caved in because of an awful storm we had, so they're having to repair that. And now there's this other storm in the Gulf that's going to hit Louisiana, my home state. So, I mean, it's just, we're let's see, 4 or 5 days into hurricane season, and already have this horrible storm hitting us. I mean, it's just the year seems to be a gaggle and a collection of horrible, unfortunate luck and bad circumstances. And I'm ready to just move on. This year was supposed to be a new year for me, and a new leaf, and a new direction. And I'm glad I have the podcast, and I'm glad we're doing that. But otherwise, this year has just been a load of pure negativity, and I'm just not here for it. But anyway, I had a great week. My birthday was this past Monday, and I celebrated that. I'm 21, so legal. That's a big deal. I celebrated it with just friends and family. I didn't try to. I tried to social distance and not really affect anyone else. I went to a restaurant for the first time in, 4 months. And so that was interesting. I'm not really a person who needs to go out and go to a restaurant. all that often, but it was just kind of nice to get out and have somewhere to eat other than your living room. Um, but I had a great birthday, and I had a lot of well wishes, and I thank everybody for that. If you sent me a thank you for that, and if you didn't, I understand. But let's just go ahead and get right into it. And the first topic today that I thought of that I wanted to discuss with you guys is something sort of related to my birthday. I was thinking about it on my birthday, and I've thought about it before because it's something that I'm interested in, and it's also about the differentiation of different people and how they think and how they function. So the topic sort of what I wrote down is the prospect of aging and differing opinions from different individuals. And what I mean by that is, for example, I think this is a reflection on an optimist's perspective versus a pessimist's or realist's perspective. And basically, what I'm saying is this: I find that, let's just start with my personal opinion. Personally, I'm someone who, at least this point, again, I would not consider myself old. So maybe that when I get to a certain mark, I'm gonna say, "Oh yes, I'm old. Wow, I'm gonna feel old." I'm not doubting that, but what I'm saying is, age has never really bothered me. I sort of just feel as though I'm just getting older, and I sort of view it as an accomplishment. I view the next age, the next stage. It's like, oh, I've made it to that mark. It's an accomplishment for me to have gotten there. And I believe that's more of the optimist's perspective. But a pessimist, for example, and let's say maybe not 21, but let's just say the age is 50. Let's just go to 50. So the optimist, I feel like, which is me, would be, oh, I'm turning 50 years old. There are many people who live over the age of 100. I'm not going to say many. Well, I mean, in all time, many, but there's definitely a chance of living past 100 years old. So to think that in all of the life you lived until you were 50 years old, that entire life, even the years of your childhood that you can't really recall and remember, the prospect that entire lifespan, 50 years, could only be half of your entire life. So think about if you feel old at 50, pessimists, think about you could, I'm not saying you would, but you could live that entire thing all over again. With that in mind, that's why I have the mindset that, wow, I turned 50. That is, one, I'm very thankful to whatever willed me, whatever you believe, to reach the age of 50 years old. And I believe it's like a step of a challenge. And wow, I'm so grateful and I'm excited that I'm 50 years old. I'm excited that I've made it this far. And I'm excited to think that, wow, I'm 50 years old. Maybe I'm old to some people, but I've made it this far, and it could just be halfway. I could just be hitting my halfway at 50 years old. It's possible. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but I'm saying that it's possible. And I feel like that's my take on it. I feel like that's my perspective. And the flip side perspective of that would be the pessimist's perspective. Now, the pessimist or realist perspective is that of reality, obviously, to them. And their reality is less involved in the hopeful nature and more in the statistical data. Statistically, on average, the average lifespan is not near 100. The average lifespan is I think it's in the high 70s right now. Well, obviously, women might have just tipped over 80 in the United States, and then men might be in the 70s ish, higher 70s ish. Um, Let me look that up real quick. Let's see. Average life. lifespan in the United States. Let's see. Let's see what we got here. Okay, the average lifespan in the United States, and this looks like it's men and women average, is 78.54 years. That was in 2017. 78.54 years. So obviously that statistic would make my hypothesis about turning 50 way off. The middle of your life, let's see, if you live to, let's say, 75, the middle of your life is somewhere in your upper 30s. 15 or so years previous to 50. So by that logic, if you're a statistics person, a realist person, a pessimist person is a statistical person. They're a data-driven person. They're not a hope-driven. They're data-driven. They're not half full. They're half empty. So if we're looking at 50 years in terms of this mug, we have 50. I'm old. I don't have much left. Optimist, 50. I'm just getting halfway. And that's just an interesting way to look at it. And I think that I'm not trying to say that either way is wrong. You're free to believe how you wish. You're free to believe how you are. I'm not saying either way is wrong. It's just how you are as a person. Either way, however you may feel. But that's just a little insight into how I look at it, and that's just the way the world works. People have different opinions and they have different ways of thinking about things. And I'm very interested in the way that people process and think about things in their own way, because a lot of the times it's very different from the way I think about and process things. And I'm just interested to try to understand people better in that way. But anyway, there could be differing opinions in the world on aging and what's old and what's not old. And in any case, that's just how I feel about that. So I'm glad I could share that with you. Okay, let's move on. We have the SpaceX launch recap. SpaceX Dragon successfully launched. I watched the liftoff. It was absolutely amazing. I received a video of my grandfather actually getting to watch the liftoff, and he, of course, as a kid, got to see the Apollo missions and all the shuttle program and going to the moon and he hadn't got to relive that and see that in such a long time, and boy, was he super, super excited about that. I'm really happy for him, and we all were too. We in my house, we watched the launch, we watched the countdown, we watched the separation stages, and the next day we watched them get out of their capsule and to go ahead and board the space station. That was really neat for those astronauts, and to see SpaceX have a successful mission. And I know Elon Musk must have been very, very pleased with his mission and his vessel and how well it did. And I'm not sure how long the astronauts are staying there. Of course, there's 2 Russian cosmonauts and 1 U.S. astronaut aboard the space station currently. Now, of course, there's 2 more with Doug and Bob. And I'm not sure how long they're staying, but I'm sure they're going to do a lot of research. They're going to kind of put the Dragon capsule through its paces and kind of see how it functions and works in that environment. And eventually they'll come back and they'll head back to Earth, and we'll have a hopefully successful and happy landing. But what a cool thing for us to see, especially those of us who are around my age or younger who haven't got to see any of the shuttle program launches or Apollo or any of that kind of stuff in such a long time, because the U.S. has kind of taken a break from going in that direction of space travel and space innovation. And what a cool thing for people my age to get to see that. Hopefully, it's just the dawning. Obviously, we know now that these companies have plans first to go back to the moon, set up sort of an operations base, and study the moon and how it would kind of work to live and function on a different ecosystem than the Earth. And another interesting, bit, of course, is that after that, eventually, the next step is going to be Mars. And I'm so excited. I hope I get to see that in my lifetime, and I hope my grandfather does too. Hopefully, he's at that a halfway stage. He's going to make it well over 100. But Mars, the interesting thing about that is that if we can take off from the moon, think about how much fuel we could save because of the gravity of the moon. There's so much less gravity. How much easier it would be to take off from the moon to Mars, and that'll be really exciting to see all these things in the future kind of come to fruition of sort of setting up a base on the moon and going to Mars, because that'd be really, really awesome. All right, well, that's going to be our little launch recap, and I guess we'll just go ahead right back into sports, which is a topic we like to talk about here in the podcast. I'm going to start with the NFL. We'll just kind of go through them. No official word yet on the NFL. I'm not really sure what the plan is. I know a lot of the teams had scratched their offseason programs. I know that a lot of the NFL head coaches and their staffs were heading to work for the first times this past week and this weekend. Finally getting in the office, and I guess practices may be being allowed to start soon. I'm not sure about that, but that'll be very, very interesting. But as far as I know, the season is going to plan. I don't know about fans. I don't really have any insight on that. But for what I know, besides obviously knowing about fans, everything is going to go to plan. Major League Baseball, the Houston Astros said this past week that they would be open to hosting a spring training in Minute Maid Park in Houston itself. Usually the Astros head over to Florida for their spring training, but they're going to go ahead and they've said that they would willingly host a spring training at Minute Maid Park and kind of allow fans to come out there and have that experience. So that would be really, really neat. But as far as Major League Baseball, the only things that I've continued to hear is that they're changing up the designated hitter rule. Everyone will have one. They're obviously shortening the season from well over 100 games to, I believe, under 100, which will be very, very interesting because, as I've mentioned before, baseball isn't so much during the bulk of the regular season a high-stakes league as far as game-to-game like NFL, where you only have 16 games, and it's so crucial every win, every loss to make the playoffs. It's going to become a little more high-stakes, so that'll be very interesting to see from a baseball fan's perspective. And then finally, we'll just talk about the NBA very briefly. I'm so excited that the NBA has announced that they are officially coming back. The season will be starting July 31st. It will be starting in Orlando, Florida, in Disney at Disney's ESPN Wide World of Sports at their complex. They have a very nice arena there. I've been there. It's not tremendously large. I don't know if the NBA is going to allow fans or not. I'm going to assume not off the bat. But yeah, so that's the plan for the NBA. What I'm hearing is that they're going to come back with 22 teams. So we have our 8 playoff seeds from the East, our 8 playoff teams from the West. That's 16 teams. And then we're going to have 6 more teams. We're going to have 1 extra team from the East. That's the Washington Wizards. I believe it's the Wizards. And we're going to have 5 extra teams from the West. Now, here's the reason being. The West race for the 8th seed is very, very tight. The 8th seed, of course, being the last seed available in the playoffs. The East seed, not so tight. I believe the Magic are going to lock that up, but the Wizards have a slight chance. But here's what's going to happen. So when the league comes back with 22 teams, every team is going to play an 8-game exhibition. It's really supposed to be the last games of the regular season. 8 games. Every team is going to play 8 different games. Now, the goal of these 5 West teams and this 1 East team is to close the gap on the 8th seed, to take the 8th seed. Here's the kicker. All that the 6 teams on the outs have to do is close to within 4 games from those 8. They have to, after the 8, if they are within 4 games from the 8th seed, if it's that close, there will be a play-in tournament for the 8th seed in the playoff. And whoever wins that play-in tournament, which I'm not exactly sure how the play-in tournaments are going to work, but I would assume it's just going to be a fairly standard play-in tournament. The teams will face each other, and then the winner gets the 8th seed. And there will be a playoff tournament if those teams are within 4 games by the end of the 8th game. Play-in tournament for 8th seed, and then our playoffs will be established, 8 from the East, 8 from the West. And finals are going to be sometime in the fall, which is crazy in itself, but the The finals will be sometime in the fall. I'm not sure where that's going to be hosted. I'm not sure that the league knows yet, but of course that will be happening. Could be happening at Disney. I'm not sure. I did see that players are not allowed to go to Disney World, so if you're hoping to roam Disney World and its opening and try to find NBA players, I'm hearing that the players are not allowed to actually go into the parks. So don't get your hopes up there if you're planning to go to Disney World just to try to get to meet some of these players, because I don't think that's going to happen. But anyway, yeah, the NBA finals are going to be well into the fall, which is going to be way different. I don't know what that's going to reflect on next season. There's not going to be an off season for these playoff teams. The other teams will be fine, but there's not going to be an off season for these playoff teams. There may be a lot of resting involved for top players for the bulk of the beginning of the next season. I don't really know what's going to happen, but that'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. But anyway, that's our sports update for the week, and I'm glad I could deliver that for you. So just a little quick mention of the weight loss journey. I have done a poor job of starting that when I intended to. I can say that I intend to start this week, and I intend to give you a much better update the next week. I'll be on my workout regimen, and we're going to get things started. We have to get things moving. It's important, guys. You got to get moving. You got to start this week. And then any summer plans you guys have, I'm interested to know. For me this summer, I'm taking an online class in my college, and I plan to go on a few nice little vacations and try to just relax. Last summer I had a really hard class, and this summer I'm really excited to just relax and kind of take it off and go with the flow. And I'm really excited to be able to do that, and I hope you guys are planning to have a great summer as well, now that we can kind of start to do a little more. And I hope you guys let me know some of your summer plans. So thank you guys for tuning in to the Lone Star Cajun podcast. And as always, I'm your host, Christian Thibodeau. Thank you guys. See you next week.